We've got a swoon-worthy love story for you today. Let's jump in and tell us, what city are you watching from? On a weekend afternoon, Moonlight Cafe buzzed like a beehive. The clinking of spoons against porcelain cups, the sharp scent of roasted coffee filling the air, and the hum of lively chatter blended into one. Tanya Washington sat in the waiting area, clutching her worn-out purse, glancing at her watch now and then. Today she had an important interview, and to Tanya, coffee wasn't just a drink. It was the only medicine that could steady her nerves. Just one small cappuccino, she muttered, counting the crumpled bills in her wallet over and over. A total of $347, enough to scrape through the month, but not enough to live like a normal human being. She pressed her lips together, about to step toward the counter, when a familiar laugh rang out. Deep, drawn out at the end. That voice she used to hear every morning when she woke up. The voice she once thought would stay with her for life. The blood in Tanya's veins froze. She turned her head slowly, like someone too afraid to face their own nightmare. In the corner under the warm yellow light sat Jerome Patterson, lounging with ease. His navy suit fit perfectly, and the gold watch on his wrist flashed each time he raised his glass of wine. What made Tanya want to vomit was the girl sitting next to him. Young, red lips, short dress, giggling as Jerome leaned in to whisper in her ear. "Damn it!" Tanya clenched her teeth, her heartbeat racing. 3 months. It had only been 3 months since they broke up. Jerome, with his excuse of needing freedom, had left her behind with a shattered heart. And now there he was, parading his new happiness right in front of her. "Tanya? Is that really you?" Jerome's voice rang out, sweet as fake honey. He stood up, deliberately drawing attention. What a coincidence. Long time no see. It felt like the whole cafe turned to look at them. A chill ran down Tanya's spine. She didn't want to be Jerome's spectacle, nor did she want to hear another lie from his lips. A reckless spark lit up in her mind. A second later, Tanya spun around, rushing to the nearest table, where a stranger sat alone. He wore a white shirt, held a newspaper in his hand, his face angled under the light. Without thinking, Tanya bent down and wrapped her arms tightly around him. Her breath came fast, her heart pounding as if it would burst from her chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered urgently. "Please pretend you know me. Please." The man stiffened for a moment, his eyes lifting from the paper. Cold gray eyes, deep as winter stones under a frozen lake, locked on her. But instead of pushing her away, he raised an eyebrow, the corner of his mouth curving into a dangerously slight smile. "Holding me this tight," his voice was low, steady, tinged with sarcasm. "People might actually think we're real." Tanya flinched, her face burning. She couldn't reply, only dared to step back half a pace, but his arm didn't move, letting the entire cafe believe they were lovers reunited. Jerome stopped at the table, his displeasure written all over his face. "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize you already had a new boyfriend." Tanya swallowed hard, wanting to object, to speak the truth, but the man's cold gaze next to her seemed to silence her. He calmly folded the newspaper, placed it on the table, and looked up at Jerome. "She's busy. If you don't mind, we'd like to continue our unfinished conversation." Jerome froze. For a moment, his usual arrogance vanished. Awkwardly, he turned away, dragging his new girlfriend back to their table. Tanya exhaled in relief, her legs trembling. She gently pulled her hand away, mumbling, "Thank you. I'm sorry for bothering you. I really didn't." "Interesting," the man cut in, his voice even, as if he'd just watched a play. He leaned his arm on the table, his eyes glinting with an unreadable smile. "An impromptu performance, directed by you. I didn't expect to land the lead role for free." Tanya wished she could sink into the floor. She stammered, I just... Running from the past?" He tilted his head. "Or trying to make your ex jealous?" "No, She clenched her teeth, mustering all her courage. "I just didn't want to see him anymore. That's all." The man paused for a beat, then gave a slight nod. "Got it." He rose to his feet, tall and composed, slipped an arm around her shoulders, and guided her out of the cafe, while Tanya followed helplessly under Jerome's gaze. Before leaving, the man narrowed his eyes, leaving Tanya stunned with one last remark. Next time you want to hire an actor, give me notice. I don't work cheap. Tanya's jaw dropped as she watched his figure disappear past the glass doors. She had never seen anyone so arrogant. Yet for some reason, her heart was beating faster than usual. She had no idea that this embarrassing encounter was only the beginning of the sweet chaos destiny had in store. The next morning, Tanya studied herself in the foggy mirror of her tiny rented room. She smoothed the crease on the white shirt she had carefully ironed the night before, pulled on the gray blazer she'd borrowed from her neighbor, and tied her hair back in a neat low bun. Good enough, she told herself, even though the worn-down flats on her feet reminded her that her financial puzzle was still unsolved. The sign Everett and Low CPAs hung quietly above a row of red brick buildings, the kind of simple wooden plaque small accounting firms often used. Inside, the reception smelled faintly of fresh paper and overly strong coffee. A printer hummed in the corner. A tiny cactus sat beside a posted rule. Do not leave client documents on the desk overnight. Good morning. I'm Tanya Washington. I have a 9:30 interview with Ms. Nora Patel, Tanya said, keeping her voice steady. The receptionist smiled. Yes, please have a seat. Ms. Patel is finishing a quick meeting with a partner. Partner? Tanya frowned slightly but quickly reminded herself small firms needed partners to survive. She gripped her folder tightly. Resume, QuickBooks certification, a few recommendation letters, and one handwritten note. Talk about reconciling bakery petty cash. The most significant case. The interview room was plain, a wooden table, 2 chairs, and a whiteboard. Nora Patel, mid-30s, sharp but friendly, entered, followed by a graying man in glasses. Probably Mr. Everett. Tanya stood to greet them, suppressing the nervous shiver running down her spine. Thank you for being on time, Nora began. We'll start quickly with a small case. You have 30 minutes to identify why this balance sheet is off by $2,317 compared to the bank reconciliation. A printed sheet slid across the table. Tanya inhaled deeply, scanning the lines. Cash, receivables, inventory, depreciation. A scrawled note in the margin read, vendor credit applied. She penciled arrows connecting dots. Misapplied vendor credit? Or bank fees left unreconciled? Her mind snapped into gear. Would you like a calculator? Mr. Everett asked. No need, thank you. I prefer sketching assumptions first, then confirming, Tanya replied, her hand moving constantly. She traced back through the ledger. An ACH payment of $1,160 appeared twice, once in the cash book and once in the period-end adjustments, while a $3 bank fee was posted to the wrong month. Additionally, a $1,154 write-down of spoiled goods had been misclassified as a purchase instead of a cost of goods sold. I believe the discrepancy comes from a duplicate vendor credit of $1,160 and the minus $3 bank fee posted in the following month, Tanya said calmly, lifting her gaze. That totals $1,163. The remaining $1,154 comes from recording spoiled goods as purchases instead of COGS, causing inventory and expense mismatches between books and reconciliation. If we reclassify the $1,154 from purchases to COGS, remove the duplicate $1,160, and move the $3 fee into the correct month, the sheet balances. Nora squinted, intrigued. Write out the proposed entries. Tanya scribbled 3 quick lines in pencil, presenting each adjustment with practiced ease. The room was so quiet she could hear the air conditioner hum. Good, Nora nodded. Now we'll move to the interview. The door opened. A breeze swept in along with a faint smoky cologne. Tanya looked up, and her heart dropped like a stone. White shirt, tall frame, face with those cold gray eyes. Ethan Cole. Yesterday's newspaper still seemed folded in the calm weight of his stare. Apologies for being late, he said evenly to Nora and Mr. Everett, his low, husky voice neither loud nor soft, but enough to make everyone straighten unconsciously. I only need 5 minutes. After all, Cole Capital is considering additional investment in this digital accounting workflow project. Tanya's grip on her folder tightened. The awkward, humiliating feeling from Moonlight Cafe came rushing back like an icy wave. Not him, not here, too. But there he was, unbuttoning his jacket, taking a seat across from her as though the room already belonged to him. Those gray eyes brushed over her for a second. The corner of his lips lifted, a smile both polite and dangerous. "Ah," Ethan said slowly. "So it's you." Nora glanced between them, surprised. "You two know each other?" Tanya opened her mouth to deny it, but Ethan spoke first, calm and deliberate. "Yesterday, I watched an improv performance at Moonlight Cafe. The lead actress delivered quite the hug." The air froze. Tanya's ears burned. She drew in a breath, steadying herself. "That was an accident. I apologize for troubling you." Ethan leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, his gray eyes gleaming with familiar mockery. "If you're that good at acting, you must be just as clever with accounting." A thin spark shot down Tanya's spine. She lifted her chin. "If you want to assess my abilities, please look at my test," she said firmly. "But if you want to comment on my character, I'd appreciate you using more than a single moment of panic." Nora coughed lightly. Mr. Everett looked at Ethan as if reminding him that this was still their interview room. Ethan only raised his brows, amused. "Fair enough," he said curtly. "Your test was decent." Tanya bit the inside of her cheek to stop herself from rolling her eyes. "Decent, sure. Thanks for the generosity." Nora steered the discussion back. She asked about Tanya's experience with petty cash, handling vendor credits, and reconciliations in data-poor environments. Tanya answered clearly, with concrete examples. A bakery she'd worked for, an auto shop that mixed personal and business expenses, and a church fund that needed careful reconciliation. "How do you handle it when a business owner insists, 'I remember paying,' but has no proof?" Nora asked. "I don't argue," Tanya replied. "I make a list. What we know, what we believe, what we need to prove. Then I request access to the bank account to pull statements. Numbers don't lie, but people will if cornered. I avoid cornering anyone." Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Ethan tilt his head. "Numbers don't lie?" he echoed, testing. "They can be manipulated if someone wants," Tanya shot back, "but cross-checking always exposes it." Something flickered in his eyes. Not quite a smile. "Good. I hate easy, empty answers." The interview moved into a scenario. A small client wanted to push revenue into this quarter to secure a loan. Tanya didn't hesitate 2 seconds before saying no. "I'd suggest they focus on improving receivables turnover and inventory instead of manipulating revenue recognition. They can negotiate loan terms with real cash flow projections, not inflated ones." "Not afraid of losing clients?" Mr. Everett asked. "I'm afraid of losing my conscience," Tanya answered softly. "Losing one client for telling the truth still lets me sleep at night." Ethan tapped his fingers against the armrest, unconsciously, eyes never leaving her face. "You say no so easily." "But can you keep saying it under pressure?" Tanya pressed her lips together. "If pressured, I give 3 choices. Legal with low risk, legal with optimization, or illegal, and I walk away." The air relaxed slightly. Nora leaned back, exchanging a quick glance with Mr. Everett. "Thank you, Tanya. We'll be in touch soon. Before we finish, do you have any questions for us?" "Yes," Tanya said, turning to Nora, avoiding Ethan. "In your onboarding process, who handles account mapping during system transitions? And how much authority does a partner have in approving internal accounting standards?" She glanced at Ethan on the last line. Ethan answered instead, his voice even as if reading minutes. "Cole Capital doesn't interfere with accounting standards. We prioritize operational efficiency and data reliability. But if anyone wants to act, I'll be the toughest audience." Tanya gave a thin smile. "Good thing I prefer playing my own role. Accountant." The interview ended. Tanya bowed her head in thanks, gathered her papers, and only when she reached the hallway did her legs finally tremble. The tension drained, leaving behind a mix of irritation and amusement. Since when did she have to prove herself to some sarcastic stranger? The elevator dinged open. Tanya stepped inside, just as a hand stopped the door. Ethan entered unhurriedly, the small space filled with the metal scent and his smoky cologne. You did better than I expected, he said, eyes fixed on the numbers flashing above. I don't need your expectations, Tanya replied, staring at her reflection in the steel doors. I just need the job. Ethan chuckled softly. Direct. I like people who know what they want. Then let HR handle it. No need for you to comment. Oh, he tilted his head, voice edged with teasing. But I have a habit of commenting. The elevator opened on the ground floor. Tanya stepped out first without looking back. Yesterday I owed you a thank you, she said quietly. Today I hope not to see you again, as a critical audience. Too bad, his voice followed, tinged with a smile. If you pass this round, you'll see me in another role. Tanya froze for half a second, then walked on as if she hadn't heard. Outside, late sunlight stretched across the sidewalk, maple leaves swaying lightly. She breathed deeply, shoulders loosening. Annoyed as she was by his manner, she couldn't deny one thing. She had done well, and that mattered more than any sarcasm. Above in the glass office, Ethan stood beside Nora, hands in his pockets, eyes following her figure crossing the street. She has an eye for numbers, he said, concluding. And a backbone, Nora nodded. I'm thinking of giving her a 2-day practical test. If she passes, she's on the list. Ethan's mouth curved faintly. Give her Asteria Logistics. Their books are a mess. Let's see how she performs with thousands of transactions. Nora shot him a look, half teasing. Do you ever talk without mocking someone? Yes, Ethan replied, still staring outside, but rarely with reason. Sunlight glinted against the glass. Down below, Tanya stopped at another cafe, not Moonlight, and bought a small cup. She texted herself, Day 1, faced the past, stayed calm. Day 2, faced Ethan Cole, stayed quiet. Then she laughed to herself. She didn't know the place she swore to quit had quietly shifted into another story. Not just a hug to avoid the past, but collisions that neither of them could walk away from. And fate, like a balance sheet off by $2,317, was about to force them into reconciliation until everything aligned. Evening was falling, and the city lights began to glow. Tanya had just left Everett and Lowe's office, her mind still spinning with balance sheets. The morning interview had been tense, but she felt she had done well. A small flicker of hope rose inside her, enough to treat herself to a cheap bubble tea at the corner shop. She had barely stepped out when a familiar figure blocked her way. Jerome Patterson. I just want to talk, Jerome said with a dry smile, his hand stopping firmly on Tanya's shoulder. Haven't you avoided me long enough? Tanya instinctively stepped back. We have nothing left to say, Jerome. Leave. Jerome frowned, tugging lightly at her arm. You think you can just walk away that easily? I cared for you. I gave you everything. What you gave, Tanya cut in, her voice trembling but firm, was only the humiliation of betrayal. That's enough. She tried to yank her hand free, but Jerome gripped harder. Curious eyes from passers-by began to gather. Tanya's heart pounded wildly, genuine fear rising in her chest. And at that moment, a low, cold voice spoke from behind. Looks like she's not interested. How long do you plan on holding her? Jerome spun around. Ethan Cole stood there, hands in his pockets, those gray eyes cutting straight through him. No shouting, no threats, yet the weight of his presence was enough to make Jerome hesitate. This is between us, Jerome muttered. Ethan arched a brow, then lowered his gaze to the hand clutching Tanya's. Let go. Now. In that brief instant, Tanya felt a sense of relief. Jerome cursed under his breath, flung her hand aside, and stormed off in frustration. Tanya drew in a sharp breath and turned to Ethan. Thank you. But before she could finish, she saw that familiar mocking smile curve his lips. You owe me a hug, Ethan said slowly, as if Moonlight Cafe had been only yesterday. Today you can repay it by doing as I say. Tanya's mouth fell open. Excuse me? You rescue me and then collect debt? Yes, he nodded without hesitation. I need a temporary assistant for a project. You'll do. Consider it repayment for the hug. You're insane, Tanya laughed bitterly. I don't even know if I'll get the job at that firm. Trust me, you'll have work. Just not comfortable work. His eyes glinted with challenge. The next day, Tanya received a call from Nora Patel. Congratulations, Tanya. You passed the interview. However, we'd like you to start immediately on a small project in the role of data control assistant. You'll be working with the investor's representative. Nora paused for a beat. Mr. Ethan Cole. Tanya nearly dropped her phone. No way! But it was true. The small meeting room, a projector screen, and stacks of thick documents. Tanya took a deep breath before stepping in, determined to keep calm. Ethan was already seated, black shirt neat, flipping through files. He didn't look at her right away, but said flatly, "We'll be reviewing the accounts of Asteria Logistics. Their books are a mess, thousands of transactions unclassified. You filter the data, I'll match against contracts." Tanya pulled out a chair, biting back irritation. So basically, you want me to do grunt work? Ethan glanced over, the corner of his mouth curving. If filtering data is grunt work, then yes, but I'll be checking to see how clean you filter. Tanya gripped her pen tightly. Fine, I'll do it, not for you, because it's the job. No difference, he replied curtly, returning to his file, leaving her fuming. The following days were a disguised Cold War. Tanya hunched over Excel, eyes blurring from endless data entry. Ethan passed by occasionally, dropping barbed comments as casually as breathing. One wrong line, and the client could lose hundreds of thousands. Don't let your hands shake. You type fast. Hopefully your mind keeps up with your fingers. Tanya often wanted to throw the whole stack of papers at his face, but strangely, every time she snapped back through clenched teeth, he only smiled, like he was waiting for her to fight back. Enemies, forcibly tied together. Quarreling at every step, yet unable to stay apart. And in those moments, Ethan fell silent, eyes fixed on the screen. Tanya caught glimpses of something not nearly as cold as his words. Late at night, when everyone else had gone, and only the yellow glow of desk lamps lit the keyboards, Tanya slumped forward, sighing. I'm going to lose my mind. Across the table, Ethan still pored over reports. He didn't lift his head, but his deep voice carried evenly through the quiet room. Don't worry. I'll make sure you lose your mind just enough to keep working with me. Tanya's eyes widened. His mouth curved slightly. Relax, I won't let you run away. And for the first time, Tanya couldn't tell if she was furious or if her heart had just skipped a beat. On Monday morning, Everett and Lowe's office buzzed with the sound of keyboards and the scent of freshly roasted coffee. Tanya sat hunched over her screen, her eyes blurring from staring at thousands of lines of data. She tried to appear calm, but working side by side with Ethan Cole, day after day, had her nerves strung as tight as a wire. He sat across the table, white shirt buttoned to the collar, flipping through files. His face always seemed veiled in a cold mist, untouchable. Yet whenever he opened his mouth, it was as if his words were designed solely to get under her skin. If you keep fumbling, Ethan said in his deep, steady tone, eyes never leaving the papers, I'll just have to reteach you. After all, I can't afford to lose my special assistant. Tanya slammed her pencil against the desk with a sharp crack. I don't need you to teach me, she bit out, each word clipped. And I'm not your special assistant. I'm a project staff member, understood? Ethan finally looked up, his cold gray eyes glinting with a flicker of challenge. Yes, you're project staff, but you're also the only one who's ever used me to escape an ex in the middle of a cafe. Tell me, has there ever been another employee quite that special? Heat rushed to Tanya's cheeks. Words stuck in her throat. She spun back to her screen, determined not to let him see her blush. She would not give him the satisfaction of belittling her again. In the days that followed, Ethan stayed the same, cold as ever, yet dropping comments that drove Tanya mad. When she mistyped an Excel formula, he said lazily, Not bad. You just made an error that could have cost the client about a car. Good thing I caught it. When she struggled under a stack of files twice her size, he held the door open, but still added, Don't trip. I'd hate to report that my assistant died under paperwork. Tanya could only grit her teeth, vowing silently to prove she wasn't incompetent. But that determination was quickly tested. One late evening, when most of the staff had gone home, Tanya was still bent over reconciling bank statements. The dull headache she'd had all day sharpened into fever. Her forehead burned, her vision blurred. She tried to finish the last few lines, but her fingers shook, and finally her body collapsed against the desk. The clatter of her pen hitting the floor made Ethan look up. Seeing Tanya slump over, his expression shifted instantly. He strode over, pressing his hand gently to her forehead, burning hot. "Stubborn," he muttered under his breath, low enough for only himself to hear. Without complaint, he draped his jacket over her and lifted her easily into his arms, as though she weighed nothing. The few employees still lingering in the office stared wide-eyed as Ethan Cole, the man infamous for his icy demeanor, carried a small woman in his arms, his face set in grim silence that seemed to block out every gaze. His car cut through the night. Inside, Tanya stirred faintly, drifting in and out, catching the scent of his smoky cologne and the deep murmur of his voice. "Sleep. I won't let you collapse here." When Tanya opened her eyes, she saw a stark white ceiling and the sterile glow of fluorescent lights. A hospital. Beside her, Ethan sat in a chair, sleeves rolled up, his eyes closed as if he'd been awake all night. She shifted slightly, the blanket slipping down. Ethan's eyes snapped open immediately, and for a fleeting moment, his usual icy gaze melted into something closer to concern. "Finally awake," he said, his voice gentler than usual. But then, almost instantly, he slipped back into his familiar mask, leaning against the chair. "Don't get the wrong idea. I just don't want my employee dying before the deadline." Tanya pressed her lips together, her heart skipping a beat. She wanted to argue, but no words came to mind. She only turned her head away, hiding the faint, weak smile tugging at her lips. In that moment, she realized something. Behind his cold facade, Ethan wasn't nearly as merciless as his words claimed, and that was, perhaps, the most dangerous thing of all. Monday morning, Everett and Lowe's office rattled with the sound of keyboards, like steady rainfall. The photocopier buzzed, and the scent of slightly burnt coffee drifted down the hallway. Tanya set her pencil case on the desk, opened the file Asteria_recon_V3.XLSX, and told herself she would not let anyone, especially Ethan Cole, catch her slipping up. Ethan sat across from her, shirt crisp, gray eyes cold as a winter lake. He leafed through a thick stack of contracts, his deep, steady voice enough to unnerve even without looking up. "If you fumble again," he drawled, "I'll reteach you. After all, I don't want to lose my special assistant." Tanya dropped her pen with a sharp clack. "I am not a special assistant. I'm a project staffer, and I'm not clumsy." Ethan raised a brow, the barest hint of a smile tugging at his lips. "Good. Prove it." She swallowed her anger and turned back to the spreadsheet. "Fine. I'll prove it with numbers, not words. Cash inflows/outflows, inventory recognition, vendor credits, bank fees, everything slotted together like puzzle pieces." Occasionally, he walked behind her, paused for exactly 3 seconds, and dropped a line sharp enough to make her want to slam her keyboard. "Oh, you just saved Asteria enough to buy a mid-range car. Don't expect me to hand one over." That formula has an extra space. Spaces are the enemy of reconciliation. "Had lunch yet? Don't blame Excel if your blood sugar crashes." "Yes, Your Honor, the toughest judge," Tanya muttered under her breath, though she kept her head down, determined to finish. By noon, Nora had emailed draft reconciliations for April and May, due by the end of the day. Tanya rummaged in her drawer for instant noodles, her stomach grumbling faintly. Instead, she gulped a second cup of coffee, her stomach twisting in protest. Later. Eat later. By 4 o'clock, the AC blasted, dropping the temperature. A chill prickled down her neck. She tugged on her cardigan, but her head felt heavy, her vision blurring for half a second before snapping back. Not now. From across the room, Ethan stood with Mr. Everett, speaking in low tones. His gaze slid to Tanya, holding for a beat. "Nora," he said evenly, "give her an extra hour on the deadline. I need her to recheck the vendor Northline transactions." "Urgent?" Nora asked. "No," Ethan replied, eyes fixed on Tanya's screen. "But it needs to be clean. Tanya heard him, irritation flaring hot. I can check it, she said quickly. No extension needed. Ethan turned fully toward her. Don't push when it's unnecessary. A smart person knows when to stop. I'm not stopping, Tanya snapped, fingers already moving through the reclass journal sheet. He said nothing more, only set a protein bar beside her mouse. This isn't a bribe, he murmured. It's so my employee doesn't collapse from hunger. You're overreacting, Tanya gritted. I dash. Her words cut off as dizziness crashed over her, like someone had flipped a switch. Darkness edged her vision. Her ears rang. The cursor skittered aimlessly across the screen, and Tanya slumped forward, her forehead hitting the cold desk. The first sound she heard was someone calling her name softly. Tanya. Then the scent of smoky cologne and freshly laundered cotton. A hand brushed her forehead. Cold. No, blazing hot. The heat was radiating from her own body. She tried to say, I'm fine, but her lips were dry, her throat raw. Stubborn, that voice muttered. No sharp edges this time, only a restrained urgency. Nora, I'm taking her to the hospital. Push today's schedule, and anyone who touches her files loses their bonus this month. Does Tanya have family nearby? Nora asked, panicked. Me, Ethan answered. For now. He bent down, slid his arms beneath her, and lifted her effortlessly. Tanya, half conscious, felt the steady beat of his heart, his suit jacket draped over her like a thin blanket. The whispers of employees, the ding of the elevator, the thud of a car door closing, night air rushing through cracks, the city's smell mixed with distant horns. Don't fall too deeply asleep, his voice rumbled close to her ear, steady, certain. We're here. The ER gleamed sterile and cold. A nurse took her temperature as the blood pressure cuff tightened around her arm. Fever's at 102.2, the nurse said. Mild dehydration, 4 fluids. Family, sign the paperwork. Relationship to patient? The clerk asked. Ethan hesitated for half a second, the only hesitation of the day, before replying, Supervisor. Calmly, he took the pen, signing as if it were just another contract. I'll cover payment. The fourth drip ticked slowly. Tanya drifted in and out of fever dreams, catching glimpses of the man sitting by her bed, elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced. He leaned forward slightly, forehead resting on the back of his hand, as if listening to the steady beep of the monitor. The light cast across his cheek, softening the sharpness of his eyes. She sank back into darkness. When Tanya woke fully, she saw a white ceiling, green curtains, and a reclining chair pulled up beside her bed. Ethan slept in it, sleeves rolled, tendons visible at his wrist. His suit jacket lay draped across her legs. Next to it, a small paper bag. Bottled warm water, soft bread, fever medicine, and, somehow, even a phone charger identical to hers. Tanya stared, bewildered. A strange feeling stirred, equal parts warmth and annoyance at being warmed. She tugged his jacket higher, so gently the chair only creaked faintly. Ethan stirred awake. Instead of his usual cold scowl, his first expression was alarm. He shot to his feet, checked her forehead with the back of his hand, then remembered himself, pulled away, and put his mask back on. Finally awake, he said, leaning back, slipping into his usual tone. Don't get the wrong idea. I just don't want my staff dying before a deadline. Tanya arched a brow. Thanks, Supervisor. So, what deadline exactly? Extended, he answered evenly. I emailed Nora. You've got 2 sick days. I'll assign someone else to hold hysteria for now. But your reconciliation, you'll finish once you recover. Oh, Tanya sat up slowly, voice dry but steady. So you do know people are human? Ethan was silent for a beat. Don't joke. You had a 102 fever. Should I have left you collapsed in the office? No, Tanya smiled faintly. I meant to say thank you, but I didn't want you smug. The corner of his mouth twitched. Good. Because I'm already smug, he nodded toward the bag. Eat. Soft bread and warm water. Doctor says no coffee for 24 hours. You actually listen to doctors? I listen to people better than me. Tanya took a bite, her throat easing. That's when she noticed her hair had been untangled, her hair tie looped loosely around her wrist. Who? The nurse, he replied. I just told them not to cut your cardigan for the IV. Looked too expensive for your salary. Was that an insult? No, an insult to your salary. He leaned back, composure restored. Tomorrow I'll have HR adjust the project stipend. Tanya let out a soft laugh, then winced at her headache. You always have to slip one unpleasant line in between 10 decent ones, don't you? Habit. He closed his eyes briefly, as if to hide the shadows under them. Cold outside, logical inside. Warm inside, Tanya blurted, then quickly turned away, pretending to read the medication label. Her heart stumbled. Don't react to a few kind gestures. He's still Ethan, the man whose mouth could cut steel. What was that? His voice was calm. I said, inside, definitely logical. She coughed. Can I leave yet? Observation until this afternoon. I'll take you home. He paused half a second. I'll be passing by anyway. No need, Tanya said quickly. I can go by myself. Ethan held her gaze long enough to make her blink. This isn't the time to argue. I'll take you. Think of it as preserving project efficiency. Sounds romantic, Tanya muttered, raising a brow. Of course, he replied, deadpan. I've always been romantic, in the way of balance sheets. For a moment both went quiet, then broke into small, short laughter. The sound thinned the invisible wall between them, a wall built from sarcasm, pride, and hidden kindness neither would name. Ethan rose, straightening his sleeves. Get some more rest. I'll be outside making calls. He walked to the door, pausing halfway, without turning. Tanya. What? Don't try to be strong to the point of stupidity. His voice dropped lower. When you need to, say it. The door closed softly. Tanya leaned back against her pillow, eyes falling to the jacket covering her legs, the smoky cologne still lingering. Her heart stirred faintly, like a droplet rippling across a quiet lake. She could still argue with him all day. She could still be annoyed at every biting remark. But in this moment, it was hard to deny. Ethan Cole wasn't just cold. He was cold outside and dangerously warm inside. The kind of warmth that chipped away at defenses without her noticing. Tanya pulled the blanket to her chest, telling herself not to read too much into a man taking her to the hospital, sitting all night by her bed, buying a charger, and warning her off coffee. Just work. Just project efficiency. She smiled weakly. Sure. And just a heart that had skipped a beat. That night, the 28th floor offices of Cole Capital were nearly empty. The open workspace was illuminated only by the hallway lights, casting long strips of brightness across the floor. After 2 sick days, Tanya had returned to catch up on deadlines. Nora had given her extra time, but Tanya still wanted to finish the Asteria logistics reconciliation before going home. She poured water at the pantry sink. A draft slipped in through the door leading to the lounge, a room rarely used late at night, with brown leather chairs, low shelves, and a glossy black piano in the corner, like a secret no one touched. At first, the sound was so soft that Tanya thought she imagined it, a string of simple notes, unshowy, like someone speaking in whispers. Then the melody widened, fuller, rounder, each chord falling gently but weighty, like summer rain. She froze at the doorway, cup still in hand. The lounge lights glowed dimly along the walls. Outside, city lights streamed through the glass windows, painting silver streaks across the piano lid. Ethan sat there, body angled, sleeves rolled past his elbows, fingers brushing the keys with the precision of someone used to counting numbers. Yet not dry, not cold. Music made his face different, less sharp, less guarded. She stood still, listening to the piece as if she had wandered into a memory she didn't own. When the music stopped, Tanya realized she'd been holding her breath. She set the cup down on the shelf, ready to leave, when the piano bench creaked. Ethan didn't look up, but his voice carried low and clear. How long are you planning to stand there? Tanya froze. Sorry, she whispered. I heard the music. I didn't think it was you. Ethan tilted his head, gray eyes catching hers in the half-dark, already glinting with knowing irony. Believe it or not, besides compounding interest, I can play 3 songs. Enough when necessary. Doesn't sound like just enough, Tanya replied softly. Sounds like something you actually understand. He paused, fingers resting lightly on the keys. Maybe, he said, then pressed a short, unfinished phrase like a question left hanging. What are you doing here this late? Catching up. She lifted her cup of water as a harmless excuse. And you? Couldn't sleep. His tone was matter of fact. The piano helps me sort my head, like reconciling a bank statement. Tanya let out a small laugh. You needing to sort your head? A few things, he said without smiling. Things Excel can't hold. She stepped closer, then stopped. Her gaze drifted to the music stand by the piano. An old sheet, edges creased, faint pencil slurs. At the yellowed top corner, a line of slanted handwriting. L dash. Don't rush this part. The first letter was capitalized. The rest was faded ink. You've played long? Tanya asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. No, Ethan answered, gently opening and closing the lid, as if wavering between two states. Someone taught me. Was she good? He looked straight at her. In his eyes, something like a smile, though not for the present. The best, he said. I thought I had no talent. She told me, you have plenty of hands, just not enough patience. Silence filled the room again, only the hum of the city outside. Tanya inhaled slowly. She was... The question faltered, too intrusive. She bit her lip. If you don't want to say, it's fine. Ethan clasped his hands in his lap. When he spoke, his voice was flat as usual, but each word fell slowly. Lila, he said, we were engaged 3 years ago. Tanya stood still, her heart sinking a beat. An accident, he went on in the same even tone. One rainy night, oil slick at the curve. I was driving behind. By the time I reached her, he stopped, eyes shifting to the window, where an LED billboard flashed green, white, red, green. Fast enough to stop any last words, slow enough to remember every useless detail. He spoke like narrating to a stranger. No drama, no words like pain or loss, just facts. But the way his fingers dug into the back of his other hand betrayed the calm. Tanya stepped closer, her palms damp. I'm sorry. The phrase felt hollow. She swallowed. No one deserves to go through that alone. Ethan tilted his head, then gave a dry smile. You hugged me once, and now think you have the right to ask about my private life? Tanya stiffened, heat rushing to her face. She stumbled back half a step. I didn't mean... I know, he cut in, with a faint sigh, as if surprised himself at saying so much. But I don't like pity. I'm not pitying you, Tanya replied quickly, steadying her voice. I just respect it. Ethan said nothing. In the dimness, his eyes lost their usual sharpness. They sank deep like a dry well, bare at the bottom, rough but real. After a long pause, he nodded slightly. She left this piano, he murmured, running a slow finger across the lid, as if afraid to scratch the lacquer. I didn't touch it for a year. Played one note once, shut it again. That note stayed in my head for a week. When I reached the second phrase, I realized I didn't want to lose the first anymore. So, here I am. Starting over slowly, Tanya whispered, like learning to breathe after you've been winded. Ethan looked at her, neither agreeing nor denying. He nudged the bench aside, gesturing. Sit. I don't play, Tanya protested, waving her hands. You don't need to, he said. Just turn the pages. When I nod, hesitant, she sat at the edge of the bench, leaving a proper distance. Ethan set his hands on the keys, repeating the earlier phrase, this time steadier, with intention, with reply. When he nodded, Tanya turned the page. The sound of paper crackled oddly loud in the dim room. On the third page corner, faint pencil notes again. Don't skip the silence. Silence is music too, she read silently, then smiled. Ethan stopped playing and glanced over. What's funny? She wrote the way I talk, Tanya said. I tell bakery clients not to stuff numbers, just to balance. Leave white space to breathe. Balance sheets need silence too. Ethan let out a breath of soundless laughter, lips quirking faintly. Silence in books usually means errors. In life it doesn't, Tanya replied, startled at how intimate she sounded. She quickly corrected, I mean, sometimes pausing is how you move forward. He didn't tease. The piece ended on an open chord, neither happy nor sad, like a door left ajar. Ethan lifted his hands, not looking at her, murmuring, It's late. Tanya stood, returning the sheet to its place. She almost said, Get some rest, but stopped. Polite phrases felt unnecessary here. She picked up her cup, stepping back toward the door. Ethan, she said softly. He looked up. Thank you for telling me. I won't bring it up again if you don't want. Don't, he answered, voice slightly hoarse. But don't act like you never heard. Her chest tightened. She nodded. Okay. He rose, gently closed the piano lid. The soft click echoed. Then he grabbed his coat and walked with her to the door. The hallway was empty, sensor lights blinking on in clusters as they passed. At the elevator, he pressed the button, hands in pockets, his face wearing the familiar, cold CEO mask. Come 20 minutes late tomorrow, he said, eyes on the display. You still have medicine. Don't push it. Tanya tilted her head. Are you caring? No, he replied with a faint smirk. I'm preserving efficiency. Right. Romantic in the way of balance sheets, Tanya echoed his old joke, and for the first time saw him actually smile. A small, fleeting reflection on glass. The elevator opened. They stepped in, standing at opposite corners like two magnets pulling and repelling at once. From the stainless steel reflection, Tanya saw herself. Low ponytail, eyes still tired but brighter than days before. And him, shoulders straight, posture impeccable, but eyes in the mirror carried loneliness. When the doors opened at the lobby, Tanya stepped out first, then turned back quietly. Get some sleep. Tomorrow keep playing 3 songs. Ethan leaned against the frame, hesitating a beat between distance and words outside his checklist. At last he chose half-joking safety. Fine, but don't think page-turning counts as a KPI. Then add it, Tanya retorted, pursing her lips. New KPI, preserve silence. The doors shut, slicing a thin line of light between them. Tanya walked through the lobby, night air brushing her face, the faint scent of old rain lingering from the afternoon shower. Inside her chest, a note hung unresolved. Not sharp, not heavy. Just there. Cold outside, warm inside. She had once joked about him like that. Tonight, hearing those notes, stubborn yet tender, she knew it wasn't a joke anymore. And that was the dangerous part. The cold exterior warned people away, but the warmth hidden inside made them want to stay. Loving this story. This story belongs to Soul Stories. If you see it anywhere else, please come back to our official channel to enjoy it in full. Friday evening, Tanya was about to leave the office when Ethan blocked her path right in front of the elevator. His black suit made his tall frame look even more imposing, gray eyes calm and cold as always. Are you free tonight? He asked bluntly, no preamble. Tanya froze. What exactly is that supposed to mean? Dinner, he replied, his tone flat, void of nuance. Then, as if afraid she'd misunderstand, he added another line, which only made it more arguable. You should feel honored. I've never brought anyone into this kitchen. Oh, thank you for giving me the privilege of being your first cooking experiment. Tanya crossed her arms, half annoyed, half amused. Ethan's lips curved faintly. At least you know your position. Ethan's penthouse on the top floor of a glass tower opened to a sweeping view of the city. Warm yellow light spread across a living room that was larger than Tanya's entire rented apartment combined. But what shocked her most was the open kitchen, spotless, luxurious, and lifeless, as if no one had ever touched it. You call this a kitchen? Tanya gawked. Looks more like a set for a commercial. That's why I said, you're the first to step inside, Ethan answered coolly, opening the fridge. Sit down. Just don't break anything. Tanya perched on a tall bar stool watching him. It was hard to believe a millionaire in a white shirt was chopping vegetables. She bit her lip, trying not to laugh. What are you cooking? Don't tell me it's instant noodles. Mushroom risotto, he said immediately. Simple enough not to be a disaster, Complex enough to prove I don't live off canned food. Tanya burst out laughing. You actually need to prove that? Ethan glanced at her, his eyes holding a flicker of challenge. Are you laughing at me? No, Tanya raised her hands. I'm just impressed. Cold in the office, but apparently you can stand in a kitchen too. He didn't reply, only stirred the rice in the pan, the smell of butter filling the room. Dinner started a little awkwardly. Tanya ate while glancing around the apartment, everything dark-toned, gray upon gray, searching for something to say. At last, she blurted, "Do you realize everything in here is gray? Gray walls, gray chairs, gray rug. What are you trying to do? Turn yourself into a statue?" Ethan looked up, one brow raised slightly. Gray is neutral, safe. Safe, sure, but boring. I bet you've never once tried buying a yellow pillow or a floral painting. He let out a short laugh. I don't need rose print pillows to sleep. Right, you only need balanced sheets to lull you to bed. Tanya shot back, teasing. Ethan paused for a second, then actually laughed. Not long, but real, making Tanya lift her head in surprise. In that instant, his face wasn't a wall of ice, but that of a normal man, even approachable. I don't remember the last time I laughed during dinner, Ethan admitted, his voice lower. Tanya propped her chin on her hand, her eyes softening. Well, consider tonight the solution to your emotional balance sheet. He looked at her longer than usual, as if about to argue, but then let it go. Dinner ended with a hastily opened bottle of wine. Tanya, slightly tipsy, freely shared stories from childhood, like the time she miscalculated her class's petty cash, lost the candy fund, and got chased around the schoolyard by classmates. Ethan listened, his eyes brighter than usual, nodding now and then, even chuckling softly. When Tanya stood to leave, he walked her to the door. Suddenly, the room fell quiet, the only sound the hum of the air conditioner. Thanks for dinner, she said softly. Don't get the wrong idea. Ethan quickly slipped his cold mask back on. I just don't want my employee fainting again. But the corner of his mouth curved, and Tanya saw it clearly. No matter how much he denied it, Ethan Cole was not nearly as cold as he pretended to be. She stepped into the elevator, her heart trembling lightly, while he stood in the doorway, gray eyes following her, quietly keeping just enough distance. On Monday morning, Tanya hurried into the office building with a stack of files in her arms. Just as she stepped out of the elevator, a familiar face was waiting at the reception desk. Jerome Patterson. He wore a light-colored suit, a bold red tie, and was still polished and overly confident. A half-smile spread across his face the moment he saw her. Tanya, Jerome drawled, I had to wait all morning just to catch you? Tanya exhaled sharply and quickened her pace. What are you doing here? This is a workplace, not your stage. Jerome arched his brows, keeping stride beside her. I just want to talk. I know you haven't forgotten me, Tanya. You can act cold, but deep down. I forgot a long time ago, Tanya cut in, her voice firm but trembling slightly. Jerome gave a thin smile, leaning closer to her ear. If you'd forgotten, why do you panic every time you see me? Why do you still blush, just like when we were together? Tanya froze. Her heart tightened, not because his words were true, but because of the fury of having her past dragged back into the present. Before she could answer, a deep, icy voice came from behind. She doesn't need to look back at the past. Jerome turned. Ethan Cole stood there, hands in his pockets, gray eyes sharp as blades cutting straight into him. Each word fell from his lips like a knife. Now she has me. The air froze for a moment. The receptionist looked up in shock. A few passing employees stopped in their tracks. Tanya's breath caught, her eyes widening at Ethan. Jerome gave a strained laugh, but his eyes betrayed his defeat. Oh, I see. Guess I was mistaken. Straightening his tie, he backed away awkwardly, leaving Tanya's heart racing. Silence lingered. Tanya wanted to say something, but Ethan had already turned toward her, his expression cool and indifferent again, as if his words just now had been nothing more than business. Don't misunderstand, he said, voice steady and low. I just don't like being disturbed. Tanya's throat tightened. Logic told her not to be foolish, that he only stepped in because of the situation. But her heart refused to listen. It pounded faster, louder, chaos erupting, as if the words, "Now, she has me," were still echoing in her ears. She turned away quietly, hiding the heat burning in her cheeks. Ethan Cole. Was he truly cold, or was he the one throwing her heartbeat into chaos? All week long, the Asteria Logistics project entered its final stretch. Tanya's eyes were glued to Excel sheets, flipping through contracts, checking each line of data. The pressure was crushing, but she pressed on. That night, the office was lit only by a few dim lamps. Beyond the glass windows, the city shimmered with streams of headlights. Tanya typed in the last few lines, eyes burning, head heavy. Just finish this and go home, she told herself. But as soon as she closed her eyes for a moment on the lounge sofa, she slipped into sleep. Ethan walked out of a small meeting room, a stack of files in hand. He froze when he saw Tanya curled on the sofa, her jacket slipped to the floor. The golden light brushed across her face, her lashes trembling like butterfly wings. For a moment, the world was free of keyboards and numbers, only the small figure of someone who had worked herself to exhaustion. Ethan slowed his steps, his gaze never leaving her. The walls he had built around himself cracked. His chest ached with something unfamiliar, part pity, part warmth. He murmured, voice low enough for the air alone. "If you only knew how much you're unsettling me." At that instant, Tanya stirred. Her drowsy eyes blinked open, meeting his. Not cold, not mocking. His eyes were filled with something raw, unguarded. The air thickened. Ethan jolted, quickly turning away. He picked up her jacket, draped it back over her shoulders, his tone snapping back to calm control. "Sleeping in the office isn't wise. Go home. Tomorrow will be another long day." Still half asleep, Tanya nodded, her heart racing. Her gaze followed him as he walked away. Inside, she knew. The line between cold CEO and the man she never expected was blurring, piece by piece. Rumors arrived like a summer storm. Monday morning, as Tanya stepped into the office, a coworker hastily hid their phone, but not quickly enough. The headline was clear on the screen. "Charming young employee seduces lonely millionaire? Office fling or real-life miracle?" Beneath it was a blurry but recognizable photo. Ethan walking beside her, his hand lightly touching her back as they exited the building. "There she is again," a whisper. "Assistant, my foot." "Look at her! Just—" Another voice cut off quickly as Tanya walked past. She held her head high, straighter than usual, but her ears burned. Every stare, every murmur, pierced her like thorns. By noon, Nora called Tanya into the conference room. Mr. Everett was already seated, his face heavy. "Tanya, you know," Nora began carefully, "we're just a small firm. Partnering with Cole Capital is vital for our reputation. But clients have started asking questions. They fear the tabloids will drag us into scandal." Mr. Everett sighed. "Perhaps it's best we suspend your subcontract for now, at least until this blows over." The words hit like a knife to Tanya's chest. She clenched her fists, forcing her voice to remain calm. "I understand." That afternoon, Ethan strode into the office, a newspaper in hand. He slammed it onto Tanya's desk, his voice sharp. "Ridiculous. These tabloids. What did you do to make them follow you?" Tanya looked up, eyes red but defiant. "I didn't do anything. I was just standing next to you." Ethan's eyes darkened. He was silent for a few seconds, then delivered the cruelest blow. "If you're this fragile, you won't last long." Tanya went cold. She stared at him, her eyes asking silently, "Do you really think I'm nothing but a burden?" She drew a deep breath, gathered her files, and stood. "Fine. If that's what you think, I'll prove I'm not fragile. But I'll do it, without standing behind you." With that, Tanya walked straight out of the office. Ethan's hand clenched white around the edge of the desk. In his gray eyes, the anger no longer burned at the tabloids or the rumors, but at himself, the man who had just pushed her away with the harshest words. News that Tanya had handed in her resignation reached Ethan on Thursday morning. He walked into the office and stopped dead at the familiar desk across from his, now empty. No chipped porcelain coffee mug, no little notebook with messy scribbles. No girl frowning at her screen as she keyed in numbers. All that remained was a neatly folded piece of paper. Thank you for the opportunity. I need to walk my own path. Tanya. Ethan stood frozen, his hand crushing the note until it wrinkled. His chest tightened, an odd sensation washing over him, like the air around him had just been sucked dry. He went to her apartment, an old building on a narrow street. The door was ajar, and inside lay emptiness. Cardboard boxes scattered across the floor, the cheap sofa gone, the room chillingly bare. Ethan had never felt panic like this before. The man always praised for composure, coldness, and control. Now couldn't control one thing, Tanya's absence. He remembered every silly grin when she spilled coffee, the way her eyes lit up, chin propped on her hand, when she argued over a minor ledger entry. Her voice, stubborn yet warm, daring to defy him until she blushed when he smirked. And the moment he called her weak, everything rushed back, leaving him hollow, hurting. That afternoon, rain poured over the city like a flood. Ethan drove aimlessly through familiar streets, the headlights blurred by water. His heart tore at itself. I already lost Lila once. No, I can't let Tanya vanish too. And then, through the downpour, he saw her. Tanya stood on the curb, umbrella tilted, clutching an old suitcase tight. Rain splashed around her feet, her eyes distant as if searching for a place to go, but with nowhere to land. Ethan braked hard, leapt out of the car, rain soaking his shoulders. He reached her without thinking. Ethan! Tanya blinked in shock. What are you doing here? He didn't let her finish. Ethan pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly it was as if he feared she would vanish. His voice was hoarse, breaking into the storm. Don't disappear from my life. I've already lost once. I can't survive another. Tanya stiffened, eyes wide. Her heart pounded wildly, not knowing if it was from the cold rain or the heat of his embrace. In that moment, all the sarcasm, the cold words, the teasing, collapsed. What remained was a man, for the first time, laying bare his fear of loss. And Tanya knew this moment would change everything. The heavy rain didn't stop that night. Ethan draped his coat over Tanya's shoulders and guided her into the car. The entire ride back, he was silent, glancing at her every so often, just to make sure she was really there, still by his side. The car pulled up in front of the Cole estate. Warm golden light spilled from the gates, rain shimmering against it. Ethan opened the door, held the umbrella, and led Tanya inside. The fireplace crackled in the living room, flames reflecting across his face, still stern, but stripped of its usual mask. Tanya cradled the hot tea brought by the housekeeper, her heart both warmed and unsettled. You didn't need to bring me here, she murmured. I can... No. Ethan cut her off, his voice low but firm. I can't leave you alone. Not anymore. Tanya looked up, caught by his eyes. No mockery, no indifference, only something so raw it tightened her throat. He drew a deep breath, then stepped closer. Tanya, I know I hurt you. I teased you, shut you out, because I was afraid of letting someone in again, only to lose them. He paused, eyes shutting briefly before opening again, so sincere her heart faltered. But the truth is, you've melted my heart. The room fell silent. Only the rain against the glass and the pounding of Tanya's heartbeat filled the air. Her lips trembled, her eyes stinging. The man before her was far from perfect, too closed off, too rigid, too sharp with his words. But it was exactly that clumsy fear that made his confession so genuine, she couldn't deny it. You, Tanya whispered, her voice trembling, you don't need to be perfect. Just honest. For a suspended moment, Ethan reached out, his fingers still damp with rain, brushing her cheek. Tanya didn't pull away. They gazed at each other, in the final distance dissolved. Their lips met, soft at first, then deeper. No longer the hurried embrace to escape at a cafe, but a beginning, warm, trembling, certain. When they parted, Ethan murmured, his lips against her forehead, Don't leave again. Stay with me. Tanya smiled, her eyes glowing in the firelight. For the first time, she saw clearly. Behind all the ice, Ethan Cole was simply a man longing to be loved, and she was the answer. Months passed and spring arrived in the city. The skies stretched clear and radiant. Today, the small street buzzed with unusual excitement. In front of a newly renovated building, a red banner hung high, and rows of fresh flowers stood lined up along the entrance. The company's name gleamed brightly on the polished sign, Washington and Company. Accounting. Tanya stood at the doorway, dressed in a simple yet elegant office dress, her face glowing with a rare brightness. This wasn't just a new office. It was a dream she once thought she could never reach. And all of it had been possible in large part thanks to the man who had watched over her through every trial. Guests, friends, and colleagues arrived one by one with congratulations. Many were surprised at the boldness of the once small girl, now the official partner of Cole Capital in an independent firm, funded by Ethan himself. Amid the laughter and chatter, Tanya turned and found Ethan. He walked toward her, tall and steady among the crowd, his suit tailored perfectly as always. His familiar gray eyes, no longer cold, were softened with warmth the moment they met hers. He stopped in front of her, silent at first. Only when the crowd around them quieted slightly did Ethan take her hand, his grip firm, yet gentle enough to reassure her. "This time, you didn't hug the wrong person. You hugged the right one." The words rang out, not sarcastic, not teasing, but a declaration, solid and certain, before everyone present. Tanya laughed, her eyes stinging. Without another word, she threw herself into his arms. And this time the embrace wasn't to avoid something, wasn't to escape the past. It was to affirm a shared future. Applause broke out around them. Guests smiled, and even Nora and Mr. Everett nodded with pride. In Ethan's arms, Tanya felt his heartbeat sinking with hers. Under the dazzling lights of the grand opening, they held each other tightly, sweet, warm, sealing the story that had begun with an unexpected hug and became the embrace of destiny.